Thank you all for coming here and escaping the negotiations. I think the APA is happening right now. There must be. So we really appreciate your valuing our side event and change of the official negotiation. So thank you, everyone. It's great to see a full room. My name is Wael Hmeidan. I'm the Executive Director of Climate Action Network International, otherwise known as CAN. I feel I need to introduce myself. Usually I don't, but looking at this panel, I think I'm the one least known here. So hello, everyone. So this evening is about the action agenda, assessing the action agenda and look what needs to be improved, discussing it. And we're hoping to have a very interactive session. So I encourage all the panelists to, whenever you feel you need something or you'd like to intervene on a certain question that maybe not directed to you, go ahead. Try, yeah, please. Exactly, but this kind of spirit is what we need. And please try to be snappy in your intervention so we keep it interactive and prevent long speeches. And later on, we'll be giving opportunities for the audience to also interact with the panel. What I will do right now is just go introducing everyone and get over with that. And then we go straight to the subject matter. So I will start with Manuel Pulgar Vidal. As everyone knows, no one needs to introduce him. He used to be a COP president. And whoever is in this process knows all the COP presidents. In Lima, did a very successful COP. He started with the NGO community before, and that's how many change makers start with NGOs and they go to something important. But luckily, we gained him back to the movement. So now he's back as leading the climate and energy practice in WWF International. We have also Katarina Lur. Katarina Lur is the Vice Mayor for Environment of Stockholm in Sweden, representing the Green Party. She holds a PhD in neuroscience, which is really impressive. She has been Vice Mayor for Environment since 2014 and is also the chair of the Environment and Health Committee. Stockholm is a member of C40, which is a very inspiring group of cities working together on climate action. Stockholm City has shown high ambition and has adopted a 100% renewable energy-based economy, which many of us are pushing for. And Stockholm has been a strong contender in the city challenge, both in Swedish and in international perspective. Good luck. Verena Treber, Allianz Climate Solutions. Verena Treber is a senior project manager with the climate advisory team at Allianz Climate Solutions. She works on the integrating climate change consideration into Allianz core business areas and looks at the risks and opportunity that climate change causes for insurance companies and their customers. Seems very challenging. Allianz Climate Solutions bring together the expertise for climate solution within the Allianz Group with a focus on the growing markets of renewable energy and energy efficiency. Frances Way. Frances is co-chief operating officer of programs at CDP. She oversees the delivery of CDP's programs. Frances joined CDP in 2007 to manage and expand the supply chain of programs. CDP Carbon Disclosure Project, right? Okay, good. It's always good to know your acronyms in this process. CDP is formerly known as the Carbon Disclosure Project. Now I read it. The only global disclosure system for companies, cities, states, and regions to manage their environmental impacts and for investors or purchasers to access environmental information for use in financial decisions. In 2016, more than 5,600 companies and 533 cities have disclosed environmental information through CDP. And finally, last but not least, Ramiro Fernandez, a close friend as well, because we work really closely in Lima trying to help Manuel to achieve a successful outcome. Ramiro has more than 15 years working at Fundación AVINA. He was special advisor to Manuel Pulgar Vidal when he was COP president and worked with the French presidency, the UNFCCC Secretariat, and the UNSG climate change team on the Lima Paris Action Agenda. I knew about all except the UNSG. That's impressive. He leads AVINA's work on accelerating climate action in Latin America. Fundación AVINA, which, is it CAN member? No?
Not yet.
You have to make sure they come. Can members is a Latin American foundation focused on producing the large-scale changes necessary for sustainable development by fostering collaborative processes among leaders from different sectors. It has activities across 21 countries in Latin America and the Caribbean. Okay, that's our very distinguished panel, and it's a pleasure to be moderating it. So just to spice things up a bit, or actually may come in a different way, the first exercise for the panel is to come with one word, or just to make it a bit easier, a phrase maximum, not a sentence. So it shouldn't be a full sentence, bad English, basically, with what you think best describes the action agenda from your experience. And hopefully after we go through the panel, see how much really what this phrase or word really means at the end of the day. And I will go through the panel starting with Manuel.
Okay, well, thank you. Thank you very much. And thank you for all of you to be here. So let me share with you my phrase. The climate action agenda, it is a collective, collaborative, and integrative effort.
Yeah.
Hi, everybody. I would say that the climate action agenda is creating conditions to enhance ambition. And today, because we have the global climate action agenda, we can see fragmented actions as part of the same process.
Katarina?
Well, as the vice mayor, I say cities. And cities accounts for 70% of the green gas emissions, and we have to be the front runners.
From the point of view of business and investors and cities, I'd say it's about enabling the global economy to achieve and exceed its climate goals.
I would say courage, because we can encourage each other. We are all very ambitious, but sometimes to do the last step and really implement things, we need courage and someone standing next to us and saying, do it, go for it. Business and politicians, NGOs, we can encourage each other.
Excellent. I'm not going to try this exercise as a moderator. I have the too, but it would be interesting to see what the audience has an idea for words. And I think there's a hashtag for this event. So if you want to tweet what your phrase for the action agenda is, then we can track it over the hashtag. So please do that if you feel like it. The hashtags, can you help me? Climate action. So hashtag climate action. Okay. Hashtag. Okay. So, okay, let's go a bit into substance more. And the first thing we want to discuss is looking at the current state of climate action. Let's try to assess what has been done so far and how much difference it has. So my first question actually would go to a person who was on the inside track. Manuel, you've been there, and actually the action agenda started with you in the Lima COP. So thank you for creating it. I all love it, and it's good to see it going forward with other COPs, and hopefully we'll continue more. So from your experience, since you had this experience of creating that from the inside, when you look at it, what it achieved right now, how do you assess it?
Okay, let me share with you some reflections. And probably I love history, and the best way to understand the present, it is by understanding the past. And I'm not sure how many of you went to Warsaw, that there were a lot of tensions between the different actors. And one thing that we used to have in the COPs, it is the non-state actors having a lot of side events outside the walls of the venue. So also in Warsaw, there were some tension because some events and some summits, and also some of the organizations left the room because all that kind of tension. So when we were in the beginning of organizing the COP20, one of our main ideas it is to try to bring back the actors together to the same venue, but in a way to create a good relation to engage state and non-state actors. So that is the first part, to trying to understand what we have achieved. But also, and this is my second reflection, it is because probably, and I'm a believer on the process, I've already been involved in the environment agenda for 30 years. I began in 86. I went to Rio 92. I went and I saw the discussions on biodiversity, climate change, Agenda 21, among some others. So I believe in the processes, in the dedicated processes. So I see that what is going to happen, and we began to think on this before of the COP20, it is that even though the COPs are going to be and continue being the most relevant place and room for the governmental debate, because states representing us as citizens, I'm also sure that the non-state actors agenda are going to become and to continue being probably more relevant than the COPs, because there are a lot of action in the non-state actors. So that is my second reflection. The need to balance the governmental discussion with to give the room and the opportunity to non-state actors to give it relevant to their own action. So that is my second reflection. My third reflection it is that after Copenhagen and its failure, it is clear that we do need to mobilize action in a way in which not only by having agreement decisions, no, we are going to have some strong outcomes. I think that the people it is currently completely aware of their own obligation to mobilize action in cities, in transport, in solid waste, among some others, as a way to fit with the national agendas and national needs. So that is why this balance between the state and non-state actors it is important. But let me go directly to the question. What have we done? I think that we have already done to create global awareness of the importance of the climate action agenda. And that is good. We are in the third year of the climate action agenda. The first one, it was in Lima, the second one in Paris, and now here in Marrakesh. But still there is a need to connect and to link the global, what we have at the global level reached with domestic. So for me, it is a big challenge to create this connection, to mobilize domestic actions inside of our countries, to try to make it as a way to, after that, leverage more regional action and more global action. Also, I think that what we have already done, it is that there are some showcases. We have already heard about a lot of things that the non-state actors are doing in different fields, mostly probably because of mitigation, but we do need also to bring into the table adaptation measures, how people are doing in adaptation. But I think that in that case, the challenge, it is to link it with the needs of the people, with the needs of the countries, with the policies of our countries, as a way to create and to again leverage more results. Third, I think that we have reached the goal to demonstrate what people and non-state actors are doing in the field. But what we do need to have it is to connect more that kind of action in the field with policies. How much through this climate action we can create new policies, and that is a point that probably I will talk it later. And I think that the fourth result or fourth thing that we have demonstrated, it is that we are reaching in some way some goals, some specific goals in different topics, in forest, in ocean, in water, in transportation, among some others. But what we do need to have it is to connect it more with the indices, because the indices are a key element to try to mobilize more action. So that is while my first reflection of what we have already done.
Yeah, thank you, Manuel. And We welcome our high-level Moroccan champion, Hakima Al-Haiti, Minister Hakima Al-Haiti. Thank you for joining us. I guess she's a person we don't need to introduce, but just let me reflect of my humble experience meeting her several times during the year in several places, how active she was attending very key meetings. And I've noticed if every speech she does, she picks up speeches from the non-state actors. Sometimes I attend these meetings where she listens, and that's good when we have a decision maker listens and then takes what they listen to and bring it into other spaces like the OECD or other places that she attends. And it's been impressive to see her energy and being able to push the action agenda everywhere. And since you joined us, let me give you the opportunity to address the audiences. What we are discussing right now, actually, your assessment of the action agenda, how effective it was, especially that you're a new person into the action agenda. Manuel was the person who started it and has a certain reflection on how it developed, but maybe because now you're in it, trying to push it forward, it would be very interesting to tell us how effective you think it is and hopefully how it can develop further.
Thank you, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. I would like first to thank Manuel because he have created a so amazing dynamic worldwide. And today I think that the non-state actors have already proved that they are under the movement. And we can see it from all the coalitions, all the initiatives which are now growing and growing. And we were under a so huge pressure while preparing COP22 to be able to give a slot of time to everybody and to all the coalitions and to all the initiatives. Now, this is amazing, this is wonderful, but what is needed now? What is needed now, we need concrete, that the parties have created this mandate of the champion to strengthen and to encourage and to make the things happen and to encourage the non-state actors to go and to implement action in order to reduce the gap of CO2 emission by 2020. And because because the Paris Agreement gives this recognition to the non-state actors. Now, what we need to be able to assess. We need to be able to report, to assess what is done by the non-state actors. Are we on the right track? Are we effectively reducing the CO2 emission? Are we effectively fitting with the SDGs and with the SDGs agenda? And what is the way and the mechanism to develop together to make it a partnership between the non-state actors and the actors? And Manuel was saying that one tool maybe would be to integrate all the coalitions and the realizations in the indices. This is a way to make this a meta aggregation to see that we are moving forward. I heard the declaration of the territories saying that they can save 7 gigatons. The gap is 14 gigatons. So if we have those data, we will give hope. We will give we will build the process of the global transformation. And I think that for the parties and non-parties, we are not each one in a side. We should be in focusing and converging for the same objective. And this is what we are trying to do during this session of the action agenda.
Thank you so much. I will move now to the outside, not really outside because the action agenda is a non-state actors agenda, but I mean not the ones coordinating the process. And I'll start with the cities. Katerina, maybe you can give us your views of your experience so far with the action agenda.
As I said, I'm from a city, and Stockholm has set an ambitious goal to be fossil fuel free in 2040. And I think it's really important that the cities act as leaders and show the good examples. And I think also to be able to share our good examples with others. One of the key challenges, I would say, is to find platforms to be able to exchange the good ideas we have and what we have done. And in Stockholm, we have reduced our climate emissions from 5.4 tons per person a year in 1990. And now we're down to 2.5 tons per person. And I think to show how we did that and to show what we're continuing to do to be fossil fuel free in 2040 is really important. But we also need ideas from others, and we really would like to get them or steal them from others. And we need to find the different context where we can meet and discuss those things. So for the city, it's really important to meet outside the cities and inside the cities, and also to be able to share ideas with other stakeholders inside the cities, like different companies and the citizens. And we really need to meet and just share ideas with each other.
Thank you. Okay, so then let's check with the businesses you mentioned, Verena. So for the businesses, do you agree with the cities, the way they look at it, the assessment they've done, or you have a different view on how the action agenda has been effective and your experience in it in general?
I think the action agenda has been very effective, and we should not underestimate this contact between state actors and non-party actors, non-state actors. I mentioned the word courage, and actually it takes me a lot of courage to be up here on this panel with these champions. And while I thought about this, I realized that all the decisions we are taking are at the end human decisions. And also the CEO of Allianz, who is overall investing 1.8 trillion euros, is a human being at the end. And Christiana Figueres went to the 125th anniversary of Allianz. And she did not only congratulate us, but she said, hey, you have to do something. Look at your coal investments. And I would say that meeting was the tipping point for Allianz to get this extra little bit of courage to then act and to really implement action. And I think this is also the way it can work backwards. Afterwards, our CEO, Oliver Bette, went to Paris, and maybe him being there has had an effect on other businesses or maybe also some state actors. So I think really the action agenda is providing the courage we need. And there's lots of other examples, but maybe we speak later about them.
Definitely, you have another chance to speak. So I would like to ask Francis on, since you've been exposed to a lot of businesses and a lot of cities, are they all humans as mentioned, or some of them are maybe a bit different? What's the uptake and what's the interest level, and what drove this interest level to have the impressive numbers that I mentioned in relation to the uptake of science-based targets on climate change?
Sure. Well, you know, they're all people who work at these businesses. And I think, you know, the fact is that climate change isn't a political issue. It's also an economic issue. It affects investors, it affects businesses, you know, it affects everybody. So it's in everybody's interest to do something about it. There are some sectors that obviously don't have business models that stack up for a low carbon economy. And they're the ones that are finding it hardest to transition. But I do believe that there is some engagement there, and you know, we're beginning to see those companies and those sectors enter into those dialogues. But there are other companies that are really seeing the action agenda as an opportunity to sort of really have a bit of a race to zero carbon, to really sort of show their leadership, almost out competing one another in terms of the commitments they're setting, but now being tracked on those commitments. And that's sort of bringing, you know, sort of a lot of kind of innovation and energy and excitement about actually feeling empowered to solve this issue. So we've seen, I think, that the number keeps changing, so it might be wrong when I say it now, but I believe we've got 196 companies now that have committed to science-based targets. So those are emission reduction targets that are in line with a 2-degree trajectory. So the science bit is the fact that their target has got to be based on a carbon budget relevant to their sector or relevant to getting to below 2 degrees. And we've got 82 companies already signed up for 100% renewable energy procurement. So, you know, we're seeing them really get hold of this agenda. The thing now is to make sure these aren't just commitments, that they're properly tracked, that we're seeing the accountability, the transparency, the, you know, sort of holding them accountable and assessing it as we go along. And there's lots of work happening there as well.
We'll hopefully have time to talk about accountability towards the end on this, but just want to say for those standing, there's some free seats here in the middle if you would like to come and step on people's toes while trying to sit in the, but please feel comfortable to sit or stay standing, depends on what your preference is. I didn't know in which bucket to put you, Romero, so I'd left it to the end. You're working everywhere and on everything, so your perspective on this issue.
Definitely still civil society, very
Okay,
much,
good.
which is a role that we need to reinforce in the action agenda a lot. So I would say that what we have now on table with the Global Climate Action Agenda is a strong set of commitments. 11,000 commitments reported on NASCA. Now we need to move towards implementation. We need to move from this express of commitment to the implementation. And in that transition, demonstrating that we can do what we are saying that we want to do, it is where it is critical and adds a lot of value to this connection to the NDCs process. We are seeing it already in Argentina. When the government is revising their NDC, they are asking the networks of local governments to the commitments that they've already done to the Global Climate Action Agenda to enhance their own ambition. And there is a scope for a lot of things to do around that. We also need to ensure to enhance climate action in the developing regions. The climate action is still very much a developed world-driven process, to put it in a certain way. And there is a lot of scope to enhance climate action in developing regions, including their civil society, small local farmers, community-based organizations. So what are we doing to do that? As a civil society organization, we are creating a platform which is named Action Lag to enhance climate action in Latin America and getting people together, building multi-stakeholder partnerships and providing this information to the global process. So this is what we are trying to do to enhance action and prove implementations and monitor implementation.
Thank you very much. So let's go deep into some of the issues mentioned. You mentioned implementation, need to go into implementation. Let me ask, actually, go back to the cities and businesses to see, from your perspective, many of your cities have committed to doing a lot of action. How's it going? Did the implementation start? I'll start with Katerina, and then we go to Verena.
Yeah, I think it's going quite well, but I think we have to be faster. We now have a new climate strategy that we will start with in the end of November. And we have two big chunks to work on in Stockholm. It's the heating of houses and it's the traffic, of course. And the heating of houses, we are building new power plants to heat houses that are powered by renewable fuels. But the traffic, it's something you have to work on many, many different levels. And it has to take many, many different solutions. And that is a much more troublesome thing to work on in Stockholm, at least. And I think that is where we have to exchange ideas. But we have decreased our greenhouse emissions a lot, and we are continuing doing that. And our first goal is to get down to 2.3 ton carbon dioxide per person in 2020. And we are measuring that every year, so we know that we are decreasing our emissions, which is quite important, I think, if you want to have this competition and really be the best city. And I think it's really nice that there are so many cities that are connected by different networks that are using the same protocols and can actually compare themselves, because if you can do that, you can have that kind of competition, and you can also show what you're doing. And you can show if you have big gaps when you're decreasing your emissions. People can ask you what you did, and you can show them. So I think the measuring of your greenhouse gas reductions are really important, and also the networks where you can discuss that. Yeah.
Verena?
Okay, how is implementation going? The divestment piece, which I just already mentioned, went well. We divested bonds of 3.9 billion euro expired, and 225 million of equities were divested by us from coal-based business models. So fine, tick the box. And also other things which make good business sense, like investments in renewables are steadily growing. We are at least over 3 billion investments in renewable energies. And also we've just made a partnership with IFC to invest in infrastructure in developing countries. Where implementation is a little bit more difficult is when it becomes more complex, more structural. And there I want to mention one process which works really well between non-state actors and state actors. It's the Task Force on Climate Risk Disclosure of the Financial Stability Board. It's a very transparent process. Data users like investors are involved in the process, companies who provide data are involved in the process, and it is driven by Michael Bloomberg. You can read everything, how the process is going to be. We are very happy as a non-state actor. There's other processes like solutions for adaptation, which could be partly insurance solutions, which it is a big field, it is more complex, so it's not that easy to say, yeah, implementation is well, and we have insured all the vulnerable people in the world, if that is at all a vision. I don't know. Complexity makes it difficult to put a tick mark.
Thank you. So then, Romero, you mentioned that the action has mainly been developed countries. So I would like to ask our champion from Morocco, which is a developing country, our only champion so far from developing country in relation to that. Well, the title champion.
I'm champion in
because
everybody.
Manuel was a champion in spirit, but they did have the title at that time. Sorry, you didn't invented it at that time. So Minister Al-Haiti, please tell us, how can we bring action to developing countries further than what we see so far?
I completely agree. And when you look at the Nazca, you will see it's like the map of the light of the world. The south is black. There is no light. And this is the same thing for the Nazca. The Nazca, it's maybe I will say 95% initiative are located in the north and not in the south. But I think what is important now, listening to all the initiative and all the speakers, I have the impression that we have pieces, each one is given a piece of the puzzle. And the interest here in this scope is to know how can we be able to make all these pieces together and to assess the overthink, because when Madame says that Stockholm, Katarina says that Stockholm, it will be a low carbon city by 2003, neutral city by 2030, I will say congratulations, but the person who is living in Africa or in the small island, we need to know how this Stockholm contribute to decrease the CO2 emissions and to decrease the gap by 2020, how you help in giving hope to those people. So we, all of us, are pieces of this puzzle, and Laurence and myself, we try to organize all the global action agenda in a way that we have together, we build and we assemble the pieces of the puzzle together, and we be able to assess what who is doing what, and what are the achievements from Paris to now, what are the objectives from COP22 to 2018 and 2020. Are we able to answer all those people who are suffering now and tackling climate change in the small island in Africa, in the most vulnerable countries, are we able to tell them as non-state actors that our action will reduce the gap of the 14 gigaton by 2020? We need to give answers. We need to give concrete realities. We need to tell them that we are moving, and this movement is not only speeches and conferences, but it's concrete action. And coming back to the South, now indeed in Paris, this dynamic have been initiated by our champion, Manuel, but with many companies of the North. Now what we are trying to do is to involve everybody in this global transformation. Today, we have many African countries, small island countries who are involved in huge coalitions, but with always with this spirit that we need a cooperation, we need the North-South cooperation, we need to take those big initiatives and to implement. We launched many initiatives in Paris. We launched the Power Africa initiative for adaptation of Africa, initiative for adaptation of agriculture. We launched initiative for small island, etc. We made a very nice announcement in Paris. Today in Marrakesh, I think that we need to tell the world what we did and how we are going to do with all that. So the spirit was to frame all the coalitions and initiatives and to ask them to answer to those questions. What did they achieve since COP21? What are their objectives in 2018-20, and what they innovate? Because we could focus on two items. The first one is adaptation, water, but focusing on thematic which are vital for the population: water, food security with agriculture, forest, oceans, and all the sectors who are allowing us to decrease the CO2 emissions: transport, cities, territories, building, energy, etc. And two items which are transformational, which is health and education. So and we end by the high-level segment. You ask me for the announcement. I will say, I don't know. We need Laurence and myself to bring all the coalitions, all the initiatives, to make their own announcement in front of the world, and it will be their commitment. I will not make an announcement on behalf of the non-state actors. So we will see. We are moving. I feel that we will have a huge and wonderful announcement, but it will be done by the non-state actors.
Thank you. I know, Manuel, you have something strong to say about it, but let me add to it the question. So after we say what you want to say, I want to ask you. So what is a way to get developing countries to move forward? There was this idea mentioned in one of the meetings, is creating national champions. So start putting national champions that would push commitments from non-state actors in every country. Would WWF be interested to start such an initiative with the next COP president or something like that? Please come
Okay,
in.
thank you. Yeah, I think that there are two important and two key words in this discussion. How can we move faster? And how can we include developing South organization? So I think that there are some dilemmas to be resolved because of that two key words or that two key concepts. First, that I think that the climate action needs some kind of recognition. Actors need and feel that they want to be recognized in which they are doing. That is very important. This is a very new agenda. This climate action agenda, it is really new, no more than 3 years. And I think that in some way we have reached what we reached because we have given to the actors enough room to put on the table what they are doing. So the first dilemma it is how much we do need to continue giving this room for having more actors putting actions on the table, or we do need to create some kind of a structure and formalities that probably can limit actors being or coming to the table? That is the first dilemma, because sometimes we are used to thinking in structures and big structures and a lot of conditions, and in my point of view, that can create many actors feeling limited to put their action on the table. My second reflection, to go faster and to including more South or developing action, it is many times in developing countries, the actors are waiting to have some policy or some rule to trying to feel that they are obligated to do something. And I think that there is a very virtuous situation and principle in the action agenda, that it is that by the action, the actor can create new ways to do policies. It is different. So the idea it is to have, for example, with the idea of the cities, as a way to create new policy, to create a new dynamic of policies. And I think that is very important. So we should avoid to think that we don't need to wait for a new regulation as a condition to have new action. So we don't need to be in the different way. So, for example, in that sense, what WWF are doing with REBA, these renewable energy buyers, or with climate savers, it's interesting, because that moves me to my third point, the idea of how to integrate. Because, for example, energy access. Energy access is key, because it includes adaptation, mitigation, and development. That is very, very important for developing countries to integrate, as in the case of insurance, to integrate that three concepts in one by a very demonstrative action. It is the best way to move the agenda. But let me make a full reflection. Yes, this is the last one. Sorry.
Okay.
I used to be minister. That's the problem. So my full reflection, it is also, I'm used to saying, can you imagine in developing countries how difficult it is to deal with all these new big concepts of decarbonization, resilience, Paris Agreement, SDGs, Sendai Framework, among many others. So I think that what it is key, it is not just to talk about climate action, because for in many developing countries, climate, okay, that is not our problem. That is not our direct problem, So what we do need is to repackage, to embrace this in the development concept, So trying to say that by climate action in developing countries, you are also working on development. You are in some way fulfilling with the INDC, with the SDG, among some others. So how can we create that kind of dynamics? And the last one, financial mechanism. Financial mechanism, innovative financial mechanism to promote action. So that is, I think there is a big responsibility also of the high impact companies to help micro enterprise to move toward the climate action agenda. So that are like 5 conditions to fulfill with the faster and inclusive or including developing or South actions.
Interesting. Hakima, you wanted to come into a snap intervention on this?
Yeah, I want just to say that the Paris Agreement has brought the recognition of the non-state actors. Now the non-state actors are part of this big dynamic, which is COP, because the COP used to be a ministerial meeting of the ministers of environment. But what Manuel said is very important. What we need now, we need to invent a mechanism where the parties and the non-parties can have a dialogue together and can converge together. First, the parties have a role, is to make the policies, to make the regulation, to make the incentives, etc. And the non-state, they have the role to improve the environment, to allow the private sector and the non-state actors to act and to have the self-confidence that the trajectory is clear and there is a visibility. So now what we need this link, we need this bridge, we need this partnership. And it's why in our global climate action, we have dialogues in the afternoon each day, and in each thematic we have dialogues, but not only with the parties of the COP, but also with the sectorial ministers. When you are speaking about energy, you need the Minister of Energy. When you are speaking about transport, you need the Minister of Transport. And this is a new process. We are building a global transformation. So it will take time. I will say, I don't want to be champion beyond 20 and 20, but it will take time. It's not a question of pre-20 and 20. Because when the Paris Agreement creates this statute of the champion, it was for the pre-20 and 20. But what we are doing is more than that, is championing the world until reaching the objective of the Paris Agreement and meeting with the SDGs objective. Final point concerning finance. We all know that there is more than $250 billion which is brought by the philanthropics to development. But each philanthrop is working on its own. You can find schools in somewhere in the world, but without electricity, without sanitation. So if we converge our coalitions, our actions, and we take these philanthrops and together with all the financial institutions dealing with climate, we can tomorrow make a revolution and increase the scale of the actions. So we need to innovate. We need to be together to discuss and to bring all of the actors, the parties, the non-state actors, the philanthrops, the financial institutions, and to build this partnership and this action plan for the global action agenda.
Yes, it's a new way of functioning now with this. I will go into the interaction between state actors and non-state actors, especially in relation to the 2018 momentum and NDCs. But first, I would like to hear from Francis, since you've worked with a lot of cities and businesses from developed and developing countries, I guess. Did you see any difference in convincing, or it was every company and every institution had its own way of convincing? What you're thinking on that?
Well, I mean, it is true that if you look at Nazca, a lot of the commitments are coming, from the north. We do have companies from each of the continents with science-based targets now, I believe, but it is taking longer to get that sort of developing country angle to it. But I think the fact is that we've got a proof of concept now. So, I mean, with science-based targets, there are the companies that made the commitments, and then there are 26 companies that have actually had their commitments, their science-based targets approved by the Science-Based Targets Initiative, which is a partnership between us and UN Global Compact and WRI and WWF. And so those companies have to follow quite strict criteria, like expressing the target in absolute and intensity terms, covering scope 1 and 2, covering scope 3 if more than 40% of their emissions are in scope 3, making sure the target lasts between 5 and 15 years. Walmart's the most recent to do that. Coca-Cola's got one that involves reducing emissions by a quarter in its value chain. And I think now we've got those proof of concepts, it's much easier to share and to show that companies have figured this out, a lot of the kind of leading consumer companies, for example, and we can sort of pass that on so that target setting becomes the sort of new norm, is targets with a much better context and a lot better understanding of the actual transition plan that goes behind it. So we've got a little way to go, but I think the fact that we know what companies can do means that we can make that more of a global thing.
Okay, now I want to go to the difficult questions that will have a lot of political implications. So Ramiro, you're the one to ask these questions. What do you think is the way to ensure that actually these actions contribute to closing the gap rather than help make it easier for state actors achieve their current level of ambition, the NDCs. Do you think it would be able to actually drive governments in 2018 to say, yes, we're ready, there's enough action for us to increase ambition afterwards? Will it affect the NDCs? What's your thinking on it?
I think we all need to realize that we are entering an absolutely different process right now, which is very much an action-driven process. So this is going to be completely different, and we already know that the levels of ambitions that countries commit and what the civil society, the non-state actors are doing is not enough. So I don't think by any way that this will put us in a comfort zone and saying, okay, that's enough, we won't do it. It's going to be just the opposite. It will inspire a virtuous process to enhance and do more actions and more ambitions. That's the commitments from non-state actors and the contribution for parties. They will connect. They will definitely connect. And because of the impacts of climate change, they're still growing. In 2 years' time, we will know, in 2018, and I think we should take that year as a good milestone. In 2018, we will know that what we've done is very good, not enough, but we learned how to do much more, much faster. So I think that's the way we're going to go. And I really like the idea of the champions about taking 2018 as a new milestone. The climate summit in 2014, it was a turning point for many of us and changing the narrative. Let's do the same in 2018.
So we're calling for a UN climate summit in 2018. That's what you're saying?
And live up to the champions.
Good subliminal messaging there. Nice try. I want to also ask on the momentum, because 2018 momentum. Yes, we need to get heads of states engagement in that moment, but everyone sees that it's up to non-state actors to actually create. It's a bottom-up momentum rather than in 2014 it was top-down momentum. So businesses and cities. I'll start with Verena on 2018 momentum. What's the plans for Allianz for that year?
Okay. Let me think for a second.
That's a good sign that it's something you need to work on. That's good.
Yes, definitely. Business is sometimes afraid to put out clear targets, and there I connect to what was said, that we need to have a mechanism to assess actually what people have put out as their ambitions and then assess afterwards. Sometimes businesses are afraid of being assessed afterwards. So I think that meetings like this can help make each other more confident that everybody has to put out forward-looking targets. Having said that, I cannot say what Allianz is going to do in 2018, but I can say what I think has to be or can also already be done now. I mean, look, for example, at infrastructure investments. It is something which happens anyways. So why not already today start putting in resilience thoughts in infrastructure investments and also investing in low carbon infrastructure? It is including climate thoughts in the business as usual we are doing. And then one last point, 2018 for me sounds really ambitious when we look at bottom-up action, which is needed for adaptation. Adaptation in the global climate action agenda, I think it should be a focus, and bottom-up is very much needed for adaptation, but it will take time. Processes in cities or in communities take longer to assess the risk, for example, than just a snapshot. So there, maybe in 2018, we will be just on our way, but not already there. Adaptation takes time, I think.
Katharina, so I know this local authorities and cities are planning for a big summit in 2018. So I don't know if you have new information about what cities are doing during that year. trying to build momentum that would actually it's not only about action, but creating this atmosphere that we need new political will for ambition with the 2018 moment. Are you considering that as local authorities? And then
You are anticipating on our summit, and the announcement will be done in few days.
definitely, so that's a good. Maybe after Katerina, you can tell us what you're doing here for that moment. We will all be eager to know what you've been cooking.
No, I can't say what cities are doing in 2018. I can say that since Stockholm is reporting every year, we could report what we're doing. And as I said now several times, we need new arenas to discuss things together. So I think that would be fantastic in 2018 to be able to discuss what we're doing. And I hope that we can all see that we need to go faster and how to go faster, so that we can present where are we and what do we have to do in 2018.
So, Champion Al-Haiti, please tell us what.
No, I told you, you need to come back to our meeting. We have 10 days meeting with the thematic day each day. And during those days, all the coalition, you know, that we have already prepared, Laurence and myself, the first summit of the coalitions and the initiative in Morocco. And all the coalitions and all the initiatives, thematic by thematic, they decide together to work and to prepare answers to our questions and to prepare announcement and commitment. So it will be given during the day, so come and we will listen to them.
We definitely are. That's why we are all here. I assure you, the CUP this year is very crucial and important, of course, especially for us, civil society. Manuel, since you've started the action agenda and we saw it grow up, do you think the kind of commitments that are coming from around the world will follow an S-curve, that you have at some point where you have saturation of action? How can we ensure that the continued ambition continues beyond the efforts happening here? So going beyond the current near term, but longer term.
I think that there are two challenges. The first, and this is related to this summit, to this climate action summit, it is that even though we have begun thinking on a global goal, we should also recognize the specific reality of every topic. So it is different in water than in forest, than in ocean, than in cities. And we should continue working in every topic, not with their specificity, because it is very important to have that on sense. My second reflection, it is that to continue having actions, we should engage more the citizens in the result. Because the idea of the climate action also to make more aware citizens, to have the citizens claiming, to have the citizens being more aware and being alert of who is having what kind of behavior. So it is not just to report to the global level, it is to report to the citizens. It is to engage the citizens by saying, okay, these are the actors who are mobilizing action. So that is my second reflection. My third reflection, it is related to what Patricia Espinosa told to us yesterday in the opening. So the idea it is to connect the actions with the NDCs, with the national policies and the investment plans. So create this connection between the formal and informal mechanism as a way to have just one way to follow what the actions or what the actors are doing. So I think that there are different things that we still can do to continue having very, very clear action, real climate action, as a way to saturate the agenda with this concept.
Yeah, that's clear. I guess the issue of accountability and transparency has been mentioned. So, Francis, please tell us. I know you're planning to do a lot of that. So, can you explain to us what your plans on this issue is?
Sure. So we've been working with the DEM in France as a founding partner for a project called ACT, which is an acronym standing for Accessing a Low Carbon Transition. And we've basically been looking at businesses and sort of going beyond have they set a science-based target to really, what is their plan? What are they currently doing? What have they done in the past that could have legacy implications to their ability in terms of investment and business model to sort of get to below 2 degrees? Does it all stack up? And we're looking at sectors, we piloted it on automotives, electric utilities and retail. And we kind of basically have a sort of a scenario for the sector of how it could decarbonize properly, and then score those companies against that scenario. And so that's something that we're looking to develop over the years to really make sure, that the companies not only have made the commitment, but basically have everything in place to make it happen. And then to be able to give that information back to policymakers and investors, and also to help the companies really figure it out for themselves.
Okay. Manuel, from WWF's views, how important is transparency and accountability? And do you see a role for civil society to play in it?
I think that transparency and accountability are key in the climate agenda, not only in the climate action. Now we're in a time in which we are discussing the 2018 FD, Facilitative Dialogue. We are discussing the 2020 review. And to have that, we should begin now to discussing transparency, registry, science-based targets, among some others. So it is applied not only to the climate action agenda, but also to the formal agenda, to the negotiation. So it is true that we do need to have some ways to have some kind of rules on transparency and accountability. But I think, and let me say this in a very cautious way, we should be very cautious to do it in a way that don't lose the spontaneity. So don't lose that momentum that we have already created. So I think that graduality, is correct? Graduality, it is the best way to move that kind of rule forward.
Thank you. It's a pleasure also to have our champion, Laurence Toubiana, joining us. Also another person that doesn't require introduction, first in her role in the French COP presidency towards Paris, being instrumental, and the duo between her and Christiana and forming the Paris Agreement, in addition to everyone else. And now this year with amazing work continuously on the action agenda and the long-term strategies as well, the 2050 plans. And so, Laurence, we've been talking for an hour and a few minutes about the action agenda, how effective it was, what needs to be improved, how can we strengthen it. And I guess you've been involved in all of this, but no one yet mentioned the 2050 plans and their role in the action agenda. So I'm happy you came, because this is something very important for me as well. Can you please tell us about the linkages between the two?
Thank you, and I'm happy you didn't mention before, so I can do it now. First of all, this comes, of course, from what we put in the agreement. So this idea, we need to look at the long term to take the good decision today, which is a philosophy, and to allow for progressing, ratcheting up the ambition of the NDCs that are now already a big effort and a significant progress, but still not on track for maintaining temperature well below 2 degrees C. So nobody's surprised that I insist on that, because I insist to put that in the text of the agreement. At that moment, I had some capacity to do it. But what is good and much more even rewarding is that idea that whatever for the different processes, we need to have this vision of what a low carbon economy consistent with this global goal of Paris looks like. And of course, we don't know. Maybe we have to explore this and come back again and again. We have already some technical roadmaps coming from one sector on another one. Some countries have put forward some plan, but really we don't know what this economy really look like, one, and two, how we get there, what is a pathway to get there. So the idea we discussed with many of you already in several meetings is really to take this challenge very seriously and to try to gather forces, ideas, intelligence, both from country and civil society, cities and businesses, to just everyone exploring and exchanging ideas and assumptions on these trajectories to something which is really compatible. And this is, of course, an exercise, a sort of experiment exercise. It's a way to really look back and say the distance will be long, maybe the pathway is complex, but at least we can share ideas and we can, in a way, help each other get there. So the previously I worked, but I don't want to be too long on really trying to have many research team working on these 2050 decarbonization pathways. and we realize that no country has a plan. No country has a plan really consistent with well below 2 degrees C. No country, of course, even more, has a plan consistent with 1.5. So that's sort of the task ahead of us, really to launch here in Marrakesh, in particular November 17, together with Akima within this high-level event, meaning day, that we would call for a number of governments, a number of mayors and networks of cities and regions, and a number of businesses to say, together with and the support of the civil society, because we need a little bit of utopian and enthusiasm to get there, because it will not be easy, to say we will produce these plans, these ideas. It's not a plan, it's the views for each of us as soon as possible, and for some of them before 2018. And that will be, of course, a very important component of the facilitative dialogue that we'll have in 2018. And doing that and talking with many, we saw that really the NGO community is 100% behind this idea that we really should have a view on this 2050, the direction and what it could look like. So coming here and knowing that really Cannes International in particular, but many other institutions have been very sort of vocal on we should think long-term if we don't want to make the mistakes today. The idea will be really to create that space where it's not only government talking to each other, but it's government talking to others as well on this long-term vision of the future. And we have already a good response to that. And I'm sure Wael can develop that as well. And the objective, of course, is to see if we have a vision of this 2050 domain vision, then we can derive from this many really good opportunities for cooperation. We will need much more cooperation to do that, because no one can do it alone. That's not a surprise that no country has a view really on how to get there. But there are projects, there are vision, and some countries are ready to show them before 2018 or around 2018, and some, of course, will need a little more time. So I do think that confronting this different vision of what this economy, this society could look like, one, I think we can generate much more optimism on the government side. We can identify what could be the key solutions we have to work all together. And we have to see how much the civil society must be behind this, supporting that, exchanging views on how the job will be transformed, the way we live will be transformed, the way we eat, well, many of our behaviors and how our life would be transformed. And so these ideas that we cooperate because that's the best way to do it, we can't do that alone, but we need this vision because, again, we have to make many assumptions on what the world economy would look like, how the different technology would come in, and what kind of joint effort we should do together. That's the plan. And I have invited already 25 governments to do that, and really the response is really excellent, coming from all type of region, all type of level of development. I am very happy that many mayors, for the moment, 16 cities have already said we will do that. And I know that by December, in the big meeting, all the cities they want to do that as a sort of a part of their networking. And I know that businesses, because they have launched that before Paris, want to do that as well as what we call the science-based target, meaning each company committing to developing their vision of their emission reduction pathway, and hopefully as well the see they feel their resilience based on what the science are telling us or where we should be by 2050. So I'm very happy to begin to talk to you about that, to see what your views about that, and if there's an excellent panel to help me comment and think, and already have done so anyway, and to generate enthusiasm around that idea. Again, I had many reactions these 2 days from parties saying, why don't you focus on long term? You have to do pre-2020 short-term action. And so the idea that this is the wrong way to see the long term. The long term is there to inform the choices of today. And I need that. We need that to change the mindset that we'll see after what happened. We'll not see it. We will fail. We will have a mistake. The plan to the 2050 is not the whole work. It will not solve every problem. But if we don't have one, we will certainly make the very, very bad choice today. So that's the message I wanted to convey.
Thank you. Yes, as they say, if you don't know where you're going, it doesn't matter which direction you go, right? It's you need to know where you're going at the end. So for the next 10 minutes, I'll open the floor for questions. So first come, first serve. Please introduce yourself first. And if you're directing the question to someone specific, please do that.
We got 2 mics.
Hi, I'm Sabrina Chakar from Switzerland, representing the European Greens. I would like to know from everyone if actually this climate action, is connected, or you will organize something during the World Economic Forum. Because my problem is that at the COP this year, or also the other years, more or less everyone is concerned by the climate, and more or less everyone agrees and shares the same ideas on actions. But then when we talk about the economic system and how we should grow our personal GDP for each country, well, the climate is not really our priority. So there's any connection between your plan of climate action and the World Economic Forum or other economic international summits?
So who would like to take this challenge?
Oh, I can.
Please, Laurence.
Davos is a strange place, no? You see many people there, and it's really a weird experience. Really, I can tell you. But anyway, the 3 last Davos has made quite a space to discuss climate. Probably this year is a little bit a question mark. How much time will be dedicated to this, which is again a question mark. But then I can tell you there is a number of discussion between industries, in particular, that took place in Davos, and that finally generated some kind of enthusiasm to try to act more. But I think your question is very right. We should keep the pressure on this forum. Again, a little bit because now people could say, that's good, we have an agreement, it's okay, why it will just, things will happen. Of course, that they will not happen by miracle. So one, there is always a space. Again, it's a bizarre space, but very important to be involved in, very important to keep pressuring on G20 to have this conversation, very important to keep pressure on the spring and the fall meetings of the World Bank and IMF, very important to begin to talk to the trade people, very important, well, everyone. So we have to champion climate everywhere. And Davos is a good place, but it is not the only one. What is giving me optimism, and I see Brice here, Lalonde, that the business has decided to meet each year around sort of a middle of the year to just check where they stand on climate. And that's very, very, very positive. And if we could push the economic sector, but then the financial sector and the other sector to say, what did we do? Did we advance? And come back here to the COPs to say, what did we do? I think that's the view. But the system is, I think, nothing. It is really not totally in place. But we should make this COP as a way where we ask people what they did in the year and what they achieved. And can they be accountable of what they promise, saying that they will support Paris Agreement?
Thank you. So let's try to be as short as possible to give more opportunities for questions. There's still two interventions on that question. Of course, we need to get the business view on WEF. So please, Verena, tell us.
Yeah, very quickly. I think we are on our way to connect the two worlds, the climate world and the non-climate world, the business world, with each other. So that I'm sitting here today working for the climate department is maybe not the best sign, but I can assure you that there are other climate events like the Petersberg Climate Dialogue, which was a high-level event during this year, where our Chief Investment Officer went. So this is very important that within the businesses, we don't have two departments, one looking at climate change and one looking at all the other relevant things, but the connection has to be, as well as was said before, also the ministries. It's important that the transport ministry is at the climate discussions. So I think this thinking is starting to happen, and I would be positive looking to Davos in 3 to 5 years.
Katarina, you want to come on this question as well?
Yeah, I think it's such an important question. And I actually met with the Minister of Energy in India last week, and he was so fascinated how high the energy tax and the carbon dioxide tax is in Sweden, but it actually helped us a lot to remove all the fossil fuels in Sweden. Also, I think one other point is to try to show the values of the action you do for climate, because I don't think there's so many calculations that can show us how much we can gain on doing things now than doing things later.
Manuel?
Yeah, I remember that it was in January of 2014, there were in Davos a very, very key climate day in which we were discussing about the climate agenda. And after that, in September, the climate summit in New York. So the key question is, how can we maintain in that momentum, that kind of events, in that kind of room after the Paris Agreement? Sometimes we are used to saying, okay, we have already done with the Paris Agreement, okay, we're exhausted, no, so we need a breathe. No, we don't need a breathe. We need to create and to continue maintaining the momentum in Davos, in the SG, in many other places, also in some other conventions, the CBD in the next COP in Cancun, and in some other. I think that with the Paris Agreement, we have already gotten the frame to spread the climate in different places. And I think it is perfectly possible.
Let's take another question from the floor.
Yes, my name is Brice Lalonde. I work with something called the Business and Climate Summit, and I would like to commend you for this meeting and ask you if you are ready to draw the consequences of what you said. If you remember, when we started our first COPs, negotiators were at the center of the world. They thought they were at the center. There was no side events. And year after year, more and more side events. And now we say 80% of the transformation is going to be done by non-state actors. What does that mean? That means that the next COP, who is at the center? Non-state actors and the governments are the side events. This is the way we have to see things in the next. Of course, it's not going to come like that. But there is a main contradiction between the multilateral negotiations and what we want to do as action. The multilateral negotiations needs unanimity. Unanimity. Of course, it's so slow. That's why it's so slow. But action doesn't need unanimity. So we have to invent. That's the work of the champions. Are you ready? All of you here, representing different sectors of the society. Are we ready to jump and to make this difference? New COPs of action and side events for governments.
This was not a question, but does anyone want to comment on the?
Well, not exactly on that, but I think one thing that we shouldn't forget is that with the non-state actors, we mustn't let them work in silos. We did for our cities report this year, we looked at how cities were collaborating with business. And it's no surprise that 3/4 of the cities that have targets are already working with business. Yeah, they need business to work on things like energy efficiency, retrofits, renewable energy, waste management, water management. You know, everybody's either buying services or they're investing capital, whether it's the investor to the business or the city to the business. And we need to make sure that that's all one agenda as well. So it's not business to policy, it's not cities to policy, it's not cities just talking to each other, it's everybody talking with each other, because that's how these roadmaps will really happen and we'll get to where we want to be.
Ramiro.
Just briefly to say that definitely there is a retrofitting process growing among what governments are committing contributions and what non-state actors are doing. And I truly believe we need to recognize this is not something casual that happens. We wouldn't be here talking about climate action if it wasn't because of the leadership of France and Peru, the two countries that make partnership and working on making this happen. This has been designed, and then
it was absolutely a clear strategy from the start, from Lima. Absolutely,
it started from there, and these two people directly, they've been critical to making this happen. So I will just say finish. I will ask to recognize the two of them and thank him to all of them, because we're talking about this.
Just a note of caution. I think if you don't want to create a reaction of reject from government, in particular those government who are not as trained as to talk to their civil society, and you know there are many. I think that's a good phrase. Talk to each other, do things together, and not say non-state actor versus government. I think, anyway, that's not the reality in most countries. So, but just to take care. I had very strong reactions Sunday and Monday on that. So move it together, move to action. That's what Brice said. Move together. 2 with 10, 15, 50, or 3. Doesn't matter. Go together, but not oppose the two, because I think that will be unuseful.
I know there's a burning question you want to ask, so very fast. Last question of the evening.
Okay. I think this goes a little off what you were just saying about all these companies have made commitments and a lot of countries have made nationally determined contributions. Do you think that these could fit together, and what role could private sector play?
30 seconds. Who would like to take on the challenge of answering this question? CDP?
Well, I mean, I say they definitely fit together in terms of what needs to be done, you know, in terms of the action. The accounting side of it is difficult because the companies tend to be international, and where do you count the emissions? Which domestic contribution does it go into? And part of that's, I think, what we've got to figure it out, because do we go with headquarters? Do we go with facilities? How do we get to reporting for that? But better data, better transparency, better sharing of data, we will get there.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. I have just less than 2 minutes to sum up this whole discussion, which is an impossible job. Thank you. I had someone to help me do that. So we started with the keywords: integration, collaboration, transition, courage, and all of these. And you can see that all of this combined created what we have seen now from the momentum from non-state actors. A lot of things came forward, but the question, of course, what does all this mean? How does it contribute to plugging the gap? Here comes the accountability, transparency, and actually what's interesting, the idea of creating platforms, further platforms for dialogue, like the 2050 plans platform that would allow us to come together and continue this dialogue to increase ambition and hopefully be in trajectory of the Paris goals. There's differences on trying the challenge of going more to developing countries, and here we talk how it's a developmental discussion, it's not a climate fight, how we need to transform to a zero carbon, decarbonize our economy in order to create jobs and a healthy economy. There's still a lot of work to do. There's a 2018 moment that we see how this action agenda can actually create momentum towards it, and it's exciting to see everything that's happening here. Champion Hakima said there's a lot of things to take notice in the coming 10 days that will actually even increase ambition. So every year, hopefully this will continue and continue to escalate by going to different sectors: forest, agriculture, transport, so on, increasing adaptation, non-state action, how we can really ramp this up. A lot of the focus has been on mitigation and its necessity to integrate more adaptation into the action agenda. So that's, I think, the best I can do with the time limit. I would like to thank the panel for spending the really exciting interactions, and it was really a joy moderating it. Thank you for all the people who came here, and good evening.
Perfect timing. Perfect timing. Good one.
Yeah. Oh, there's refreshments outside. Wow, that's a nice surprise.
Nice.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. No, I'm not negotiating. Yes, I am.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm so pleased to have a panel with so many women. It's so good. Yes.
No, so I'm just going around talking. Now we're talking about what we're financing. I will. No. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi.
How are you? Nice meeting you.